you is not only my experience as a Chief Development Officer in a number of universities and faith-based organizations, but what I'm also sharing with you is our experience at the Cathedral Corporation in managing annual programs and direct response programs for about 140 universities of all shapes and sizes, and for a number of religious organizations, diocesan seminaries, all sorts of it. So again, these are my opinions. If you disagree, that's great. I'd encourage you to let me know that. But again, it's an opinion, and I hope it's of value to you. So let's begin. And there you'll see the title page. Ask and you will receive, increasing major donor commitment to your annual program. So, you know, major donors are really the key to the success of your annual appeal program. And the question that I ask of you this morning is, are you asking too little of them? You know, major donors are a cherished commodity in our annual program, and we treat them very carefully. And I think generally annual fund directors treat their major donors too gingerly. I think they can do a lot more for us, but we're afraid to ask because we don't want to lose them, and they are so hard to get in the first place, okay? So what I'm going to tell you today is that your major donors are probably a little more resilient than you think. So are you asking too little of them? So in the presentation, we're going to look at a couple of things. We're going to look at the role and the math of the annual appeal, the role of the annual appeal generally, and what are the mathematic principles of major donors in the context of the annual program. We're going to look at the characteristics of major donors, who these people are, what makes them tick, what's important to them. And then we're going to talk about the changes that you can make in your annual fund communication programs that speak to the specific characteristics of those major donors. And I'm going to give you concrete tips that you can apply tomorrow in your annual program to jump the participation levels of your current major donors. So let's talk a little bit about annual programs. What may bring you here today is that your major donors, those who are capable of being major donors, they're not really responding enthusiastically to your annual program. You know, they're making their gifts, but they're the same every year, and you want them to increase. Your major donor commitment to your annual program may have stalled or decreased over the last 5 years. Now remember, major giving to campaigns have gone up in the last 2 years. So if your campaign levels with your major donors are flat, stagnant, or have decreased, you are going against the national trends. Okay, so that's a little bit of a canary in the coal mine for you. You may want to increase major donor commitment while maintaining a lean administrative budget. People think that major donor acquisition and retention programs are expensive. They necessarily don't have to be expensive. Let's talk a little bit about why this is important, okay? The annual fund forms the foundation of all institutional fundraising. I don't care what kind of organization you are. Your annual program provides for the daily vitality of your organization to meet its organizational and its charitable mission. As far as I am concerned, the annual fund is the most critical component of any nonprofit fundraising program. It establishes the bedrock of your donor base by binding constituents to your institution and mission. The binding characteristic of the annual fund is one that is overlooked the most. The annual program binds and holds your constituents to your organization. Remember, charitable giving is a voluntary association to your organization. And long-time and loyal annual fund donors have voluntarily joined themselves to you, and that's very important. Annual programs also promote and prompts organizational accountability and transparency. So it has a value and it has an impact to the charitable organization because you have to be transparent to your donors. The number one reason why people stop giving to annual programs is that, one, they don't understand what their contribution does for the organization anymore, or two, they perceive the organization that they have historically supported as not being transparent. Who gives to annual programs? All ages. However, general annual fund giving tends to skew to older constituents. And if you read the Pew study on millennials, you'll understand why. All income levels give to annual programs. People who are both risk tolerant and risk adverse. And there is no predominance of gender, marital, or family status. So basically everybody gives to annual programs. And that's a problem in annual programs when you're trying to figure out how to increase the giving levels of specific constituencies, because it's this huge mulligan stew of humanity that are writing you checks and sending you credit cards and giving you money on the phone. It's hard to get an understanding of who these people are. And once you understand who they are, you can be specific in moves managing them. The sources of gifts to an institution largely come from discretionary funds. Smaller come from estates, and others come from hard assets. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. So remember something, okay? 90% of all funds raised in the United States, 90% of every dollar that comes in comes from the top 10% of donors in an organization, the old 90-10 principle. Therefore, the ideal annual fund mix, the ideal mix for an annual program. 60% of your receipts that you receive in an unrestricted annual way should come from the top 10% of your donor base. 60% of your receipts should come from the top 10% of your donor base. 25% would come from the next 20%. So 85% of your revenue comes from 30% of your constituents, the top 30%. The remainder, the 15%, comes from the remaining 70% of your constituent cohort. Okay? That's a real top-heavy schematic, but it's the reality of it. So ask yourself something. Is your annual appeal bottom heavy? Does the vitality of your annual program rely on these small gifts that come in on a regular basis? A Catholic bishop, Fulton Sheen, once said that hearing the confession of nuns is like being stoned to death by popcorn. I like to think of an annual fund as a wall, okay, as a wall. It's a stone wall. Is your stone wall made up of a lot of little stones and very few large, big keystones? Or is it comprised of large stones, of large gifts and of large constituents? And what you'll find is that walls that are constructed with large flagging stones tend to be a lot more durable. Are you spending most of your budget and time going after that bottom 70%, of getting them to renew? There's something really neat about that bottom 70%, is that they onboard and offboard from your annual program with a frequency that is much higher than that top 30%. So you got to spend a lot more money and a lot more time chasing them. How many of the next top 20% of your donors could actually be in the top 10%? Have you thought about that? That's a really important question. Are those people that are just below the major donors, have you thought about whether or not they're able to be that top 10% that you should be relying upon? And are you taking the top 10% for granted? Almost every annual program that I have worked with in the last half decade and over my 20 years of being a senior development officer, what I find is that a lot of organizations only communicate with their donors on two occasions: to ask them for money and to send them their IRS letter. The stewardship function of the development office is the red-headed stepchild, and for those of you that are red-headed or stepchildren, I apologize. They are the red-headed stepchildren of the development operation. The stewardship people have an office next to the mop and the slop sink at the end of the development operation. And oftentimes that function is the most important. But we don't like to have it because it's very hard for a stewardship officer to demonstrate the value in a monetary way that they bring into the organization. So let's talk about major donors. So what constitutes a major gift to an annual program? There's a formula for that. It's 0.1% of your overall goal. The rule of thumb is, for every $1 million that you raise, $1,000 is a major gift. So if your annual fund goal is $4 million, $4,000 and above constitutes a major gift. A lot of us wrestle with, well, how large is a major gift? The rule of thumb is, for every $1 million that you have as a goal, $1,000 is a major gift. So do the math. If you're doing a $10 million annual fund, $10,000 constitutes a major gift. 1.1% of your overall goal. And that helps you identify who your major donors are. Who can make a major gift? In any advancement database, and again, this is a generality, your circumstances may be different, 3 to 5% of your constituents are capable of making that 0.1% of the overall goal on a yearly basis. And remember, that 0.1% is the minimal threshold of what we consider to be major gifts. But 3 to 5% of your constituent base are financially capable of doing this. And again, that 3 to 5% is a bottom floor expectation. That's a minimal ability. Let's talk about major donors, and let's talk about some of the characteristics of major donors. Some of you may know this, but this has implications. Major donors have strong values, and they have deeply held beliefs about themselves and the world. And what you may say is, well, Jim, we all have strong beliefs about ourselves and the world. What we find with major donors is that they tend to be older, and we'll talk about this. They tend to be older. They tend to have a deeper set of life experiences because of their age, and because their income bracket tends to be a little higher, they tend to have a more cosmopolitan and generalist outlook. So they have spent a great deal of time considering their charitable relationships and parting with their patrimony, and we'll talk about that. They are passionate about the institutions and the causes that they support. Your lower bottom 70% of your donor cohorts, odds are, support multiple charitable organizations. Your major donors, however, have a much smaller cohort of charitable organizations that they support. They have made a more conscious decision about the causes that they are going to affiliate with. Okay, so they're passionate about the institutions and the causes that they support. Major donors tend, and again, this is not always the case, they tend to have a comprehensive or a strong understandings of the inner workings of the charitable organizations or the institutions that they support. Major donors, in many cases with that bottom 70%, your sustaining donors, they have a transactional belief about philanthropy. They give because they're asked. Your major donors tend to migrate to a more relational understanding of philanthropy. They take what I call the stockholder approach to charitable giving. If they give, they have stock in the organization, and they have a greater need to understand what the organization is doing, and they tend to spend more time researching what it is that you do, and they tend to be open to more opportunities, well, this is a stewardship function, to learn about what it is that you do. They have a vested and strong economic, emotional, and intellectual interest in your organization. And because they tend to give large amounts, the leaders of the organizations that they give amounts to want to hang out with them. Okay? Who are the major donors? I got to go see them. So they tend to know personally the institutional leaders. So, you know, these people are close to your organization. They get it. Major donors, this is a real dumb moment, right? Major donors tend to be affluent. Yeah, I told you you'd learn something today. So the people that give you a lot of money tend to have a lot of money, all right? That shouldn't come as a wake-up call for any of you. However, because they're older, there's a difference in the way that early boomers manage their wealth and late matures as opposed to Gen X and Gen Y. They tend to manage their wealth more conscientiously. And when I talk to you about that whole stockholder approach to giving, they see their gift as an investment in the organization. This is very important. Some organizations, charitable organizations that I have worked with, do not have an organizational history of being transparent, okay, because they never felt they had to be, all right? It is critical that your organization be as transparent as possible to your major donors. And a pie chart on an annual appeal brochure is not a hallmark of transparency. Neither are 9 pages of where the money goes. Okay? So when you talk about transparency, you really got to make a commitment to it. So let's talk about major and sustaining donors here. What's the differences here? Major donors are committed to mission, so are sustaining donors. Major donors tend to have a long-term loyalty. Sustaining donors do not. They can be wooed away a lot more efficiently by other donors. And if some of you have some issues with onboarding and offboarding of your minor donors, you'll know why. Don't forget, there is a direct relationship generally between the consistency of giving and your major donors. So there's a direct relationship between loyalty and the size of the gift. Not all loyal donors are major donors, but the majority of your major donors are loyals. Okay? Major donors are more interested in restricted giving. Sustaining donors, unrestricted giving. Major donors need cultivation, and they want to know who else is giving. For your sustaining donors, little cultivation is needed, and knowledge of other donors is not essential. Your major donors generally are motivated by recognition, and we'll talk about this. For your sustaining donors, recognition is important, but it is not essential. I think the thing in this chart that's really important is the second term, the long-term loyalty versus your sustaining donors who necessarily are not long-term loyals. Remember, loyal donors are not necessarily major donors, but major donors are usually and by necessity loyals. So I want to ask yourself this question. Are your annual appeal communications one size fits all? And you may say, no, Jim, we have a different letter for our major donors. Well, I got news for you. Remember when I said that your major donors are your loyal donors? The likelihood of a major donor actually sitting down and reading your annual fund materials is about the same as the people that have never given you a gift reading your annual fund materials, okay? Here's the reason why. I told you that your major donors are close to your organization. They know it intimately. Every year they expect to receive the mailing that you send them because it all goes out like clockwork. And generally, we tend to send the same stuff. It may look different, but it's generally the same stuff. All right, your major donors are going to look at that, the envelope packet. They're going to see the logo of your school or diocese or relief organization, and they're going to say, oh, yeah, I got to write the check. They're going to open it. They're going to pull out the remit envelope, and they're going to throw the rest of the stuff away. That's the same thing that your non-donors do, except your non-donors never open the stuff up. So what I want to talk about today is how you can get your major donors to actually read this stuff and get them to increase their contributions significantly through your direct response program. So how can you give major donors what they want to see so they'll respond with increased commitment? Okay. So let's talk about giving major donors what they need. First of all, your major donors, about 80% of them can increase their giving if they're asked. The question is, how do you ask them? They're asking for you to make the right ask in the right way. Some of you, say, well, I want to visit my major donors. We visit them. And that may be the case, but a lot of your major donors don't want to visit. I'm sorry. We're lovely people. We're all good development officers. But a lot of major donors don't want to be visited. The number one way that early matures, give to their charitable organizations is through direct mail or other direct response mechanisms, 78% of them. That leaves 22% who want to be visited. So the next time the Director of Development says, go out there and visit your donors, ask them which 22% you would like them to have you see. Okay? Refine your annual appeal strategies and communications to target the key characteristics of major donors. Look at your annual program and look critically at how you're communicating with that top 10%. Is it different, and not just in terms of what you write in the letter? Is it different materially and substantively from your general campaign materials? There is a need, first of all, for cultivation. An annual program is not a sprint, it's a marathon, right? So the marathon ends with the ask. But what are you doing through the entire year to communicate with your major donors? And for those of you in university work, the alumni magazine don't count, all right? I'm a major donor to my alma mater, okay, the University of Maine. When I get that alumni magazine, I use it generally to weigh down my recycle bin. Not because I don't love the University of Maine, I do, but very little in that magazine is relevant to me. So when we talk about cultivation, how are you pushing out hyper-personalized communications to your major donors that are relevant to them throughout the year, that lets them know what the impact of their campaign is? And something else that's very important. We as development officers tend to believe our own mythologies. We tend to believe that the causes that we represent and the funding priorities of the annual appeal are important to everybody that we talk to. Don't make that assumption. Talk to your constituents, your major donors, to find out what it is in the annual program that gets them to support it. There's a hunger for affiliation and recognition with your major donors, and we'll talk a little bit about this. But if you refer to the major giving study that was done by the Bank of America and IUPI Center on Philanthropy about 6 years ago, a study that I was very happy to be a part of, one of the number one reasons why major donors give is their need for affiliation. They like to affiliate with other major donors. It's why country clubs exist. Okay, we like to hang out with similar people. This need to hang out with similar people is very strong for major donors. It's one of the primary reasons why actually they give. And also, we talked about your major donors are your loyals. Okay, so make sure that your annual fund material in some way speaks to that notion of loyalty to the organization and their passion about the organization. So giving major donors what they need. In your annual fund communication, make sure that what you give them is special, all right? Satisfy the hunger for their recognition with a higher quality appeal material. All right, we tend to put the campaign brochure in there, the little rack brochure in the envelope, okay, and we send it out, all right, to our major donors. What I would recommend for each of you is that you consider a specific direct mail suite that is fashioned around your major donors that's a bit higher in quality. And I'll give you a case study in terms of how that rolled out. Now, some of you may say, well, we'll get calls from these people saying, we don't want, you shouldn't be spending this money on us. You should just ask. That's a myth. You may get one or two of those calls, but I guarantee you the vast majority of your major donors will not say that. Provide distinctive packaging and design that's above and beyond your standard direct response components. Typically, if you look at your annual fund over the last 5 years, the packaging of your materials It goes in a size 10 with a brochure and a butt slip, et cetera, et cetera. They're expecting that. Change the size of the packaging. Use a 6x9 envelope. Make it an embossed envelope. Use different color inks. Get them to open it up. What I used to do was I would line up all of my annual fund materials, and I would get a sense of what they looked like, and then I would do something that was completely the opposite for my major donors. I would design a specific direct mail suite for my major donors that was radically different than what I was pushing out to that 70%. Feature major donor profiles in both your publications and in your communications. We talked about they want recognition. That isn't just a list of people that give to the, the Heydrich von Blizzak Society, all right? Talk about the people that are giving, because when other major donors see that, the first thing they're going to say is, how do I get my story in there? In your case for support, I talked in my earlier webinar I did about a month ago about something called psychological tagging, okay? What that means is in an advancement communication program, when you're talking to donors, you want to use language that describes your donors in ways that they like to think about themselves. So when you talk to your major donors, talk to them, look at their loyalty rates. Talk to them about their long-time affiliation with your organization. Talk to them about being the bedrock of the organization. Talk to them about they sustain the annual program. Make them feel important. Talk to them in ways that they would want to think about themselves. And don't bury it on the fourth paragraph of the letter. Make sure that those notions of loyalty, of belonging, of sustaining are front and center in your newly designed major gift packet. Okay, that's critical. We all have giving societies, and if you don't have them, you should have them, okay? The need to affiliate is critical for these people. It's absolutely critical. I would encourage you all to look at your major giving societies. And don't look at the names, because the names are relatively useless, but look at the dollar values that you subscribe to your major giving societies. Your major giving societies become the vehicle whereby you implement a moves management program. So if your first giving society is $500 and your next one is $2,500, my recommendation to you is to create 2 or 3 other giving societies between the $500 and the $2,500 level that you can use to move your constituents from societies to society. Something else about giving societies and premiums. Your major donors don't want labels. They don't want annual fund magnets. They don't want coffee mugs. You don't have to develop a premium-based program that actually pushes durables out into the mail stream, okay? They have a need to affiliate, all right? Structure your major giving societies so that your ability to move them from society to society is not too far a financial stretch. So if you have a $500 society, you may want to create a society at the $750 level and invite everybody at the $500 level who's in the Blizzak Society to go into the, the TED Listing Society or whatever you may call it. Create opportunities for your major donors to socialize and to communicate with each other before the appeal and after the appeal. We tend to get them together. You know what I used to say when I worked in a nonprofit in the capital region, I would look at my colleagues and say, let's round up the usual suspects, and we do our thing, and then afterwards we just send them a letter. These people like to affiliate. They like to hang out with each other. Use your major giving societies as an opportunity for them to come together. So not only are you using your major giving societies as a moves management program, but you're using it as a cultivation program. Something else about your major giving packets, which is not in this webinar, they don't care about the case for support. They don't care. This isn't a capital campaign. Your major donors, remember I said they understand the organization, they're loyal. In your annual fund materials, don't tell them what the annual program is going to be doing. They know it. You're wasting real estate. Talk to them about their giving. Have the The case for support in your major giving piece, talk about the impact of their giving. All right, focus on the behavior you are seeking to change. Do not, in your annual giving materials, focus on the case for support that will hopefully change their behavior. Actually speak to them about the behavior that you want them to change. They also, giving societies, and I talked about this, fill an aspirational need, and it's promoting increased giving from mid-level donors. My other recommendation to you would be to create a major giving society that is just below your standard major giving society. So if your major giving threshold with that math is $500, create a giving society at the $250 level. And get a bunch of people below that in that society for about 3 years and cultivate the heck out of them. And then ask them to jump up. 3 years of cultivation at one level is the industry benchmark. We always say, where's the next major donor coming from? We'll create the structure that they'll populate, and then you can pull them in. Yeah, this is make it theirs, okay? Personalization in this program with your major donors is absolutely critical, okay? If you're sending out annual fund letters to your major donors that says, "Dear alumni," or "Dear friend in Christ," that's a problem. And personalization on a letter is not enough. They're not reading the letter, okay? Technologies exist where you can personalize brochures, and with digital printing technologies, it's not expensive, okay? Something else for my friends there in higher ed, nobody cares about the organization or the college that they graduated from. I mean, they care about it, but understand that when people give to universities, they don't give to a university. I don't give to the University of Maine. What prompts my giving is my experience with an individual faculty member. It's a set of discrete and powerful experiences that I had years ago that prompt me to give, okay? So when you talk to your alumni, your major donors, talk to them about their major. Talk to them if they had an athletic affiliation. If you're a faith-based organization, talk to them about their parish. Talk to them about their pastor. We reward loyalty and passion with appeal components that engage major donors where they are. Okay, so what you want to do is when you develop your annual fund program, make sure that the materials that you are pushing out are meeting donors where they live. If you've decided that you're going to go really big into social media and create a social media major gift society webpage, well, that's cool and that's hip, but they're not going to check it out because most of these people are older. They may be on Facebook, but they don't check it out with great regularity. We get all excited about email communication, okay? We get really, really excited. We're going to email them. Studies are showing that email right now is one of the least responded to vehicles. And if you don't believe me, open up your Hotmail account at 8 in the morning, delete your Hotmail, and then at 5 o'clock open it up and see how much junk you got in your Hotmail account or your Gmail or whatever. We get flooded with this stuff. Okay, so remember, there are direct, what are called media correlates to where these people are in their lives. Older people tend to like the traditional direct response programs. The younger HIPAA crowd tend to like the electronic stuff. Let them know the critical difference they make in your mission. Take some time. Make them feel good. Use language with them that they want to think about and want to be called. And ask them to give more, right? We're afraid to do that. I had a very good development director. My first one said, never deny somebody the opportunity to be generous, right? Changing it up. In the end, guys, giving major donors what they need comes down to making two changes in how you appeal to them. The first thing is change the case. And I said that earlier. They don't care about the case for support. I mean, they care, but they're not going to read it. You have a better chance of a non-donor reading your case for support. They get it. They're close to the organization. They understand it. Don't tell them what the annual program is doing for What's the Matter You, all right, because they don't care. The case for support for your major donors should really focus on your call to asking them to give more, okay? It should really talk about what a major gift is and the impact of a major gift. You can have one or two sentences in there about the annual appeal. That's great. But it should really focus on the giving and on the society that they are a member of or the society in which you want them to join. And you got to change the ask. Now, some of you may say, Jim, how much more should I ask them to increase? It's always incremental growth. It's always incremental growth. And that's why those giving societies that step up at regular intervals are critical. Don't ask somebody who's giving 500 to give 10,000, even if you've done wealth screening on them, okay? Ease them into the process. Ease them into the process. Now, does this work? You know, everything that I've said for the last 30 minutes, does it work? We worked with a nonprofit in Ohio 2 years ago, and we implemented all of these pieces very clearly, like right down the line, in a very concise program. The average increase to the major gift levels was 40%. So my response is, yeah, it does work. Change the ask. Don't send major donors a generic ask letter. Oh, and here's the thing. When you're asking them to increase their giving, don't put the dollar amount in the letter. Just reference the giving society. Let them figure out what the dollar amount is. And don't apologize for asking more of major donors. You know, we really need your money. You know, we're going to close if we don't get your money. They know that, right? They know it. They're close to the organization. Just ask. Personalize the giving. You know, if you know a little bit more about these people and you can bump up the ask apart from those societies, that's great. It takes a lot of time. A lot of you run one-person shops. So develop a formula that you can roll out against this entire cohort to get them to increase their giving. And feature specific giving opportunities that align with their values and their passions. You need to survey your major donors, guys. You need to develop a survey, send it out to people that give 0.1% of your annual fund goal, and ask, why do you support this college or this diocese or this relief agency or this hospital? Why do you do it? The more that you know about these people, the more that you can push out communication to them that speaks to their values and their passions. Always use their previous giving as a benchmark. This is a real dumb moment, right? But ask them for an increase in a range that gives them room to stretch their giving. I've covered a lot of this earlier. You know, and what's really important is investing in powerful solutions now is the most cost-effective move you can make to increase major giving commitments to your annual program. And those powerful solutions, a lot of it is on variable print. And you can ask, and you will receive, and that's the infomercial, but I'm not going to pitch. So I've got my question pane. I'm going to try to open my question pane to see if anybody's got questions, and we'll see. Does anybody have questions? I think they do, but I can't open it. Hold on. Well, guys, we're experiencing some technical difficulties. If you put your name next to your question, just try this. Here we go. Got some questions from Paul Javaslik at Christendom College. Julie Cunningham. Are there slides for the information James is giving? Well, I hope you've seen those slides, Julie. Why is this the ideal? Doesn't it conflict with the standard 90-10 rule? Why is 60-10 in the annual fund? Paul, I think the numbers and the benchmarks that we develop, they are fluid and they can change from time to time. But that has been our experience. Can you actually be too top heavy? Oh, you can be too top heavy. I have a client now who said to me, Jim, if I lose one of my major donors, my appeal is going to be going in the garbage can. I mean, it puts you at risk. So that's why I always say you got to develop that bottom 20% below the 10%, Paul, are really the people that you need to cultivate and move up. A major gift in my program, Mark Piekarski, would be considered $500. What dollar level donor gift should I be trying to move to the 500 level? Mark, I think if you want to get somebody up to 500, I would look at those people right now that are giving between $350 to $499. Do we really need all those levels? Yes, you do need all those levels. The more levels that you have, Paul, the greater your ability it is to move people between giving levels. Focusing on gifts, elevating gifts individually is expensive. You're going to spend a lot of time doing this. Bates, can you give some example of transparency for major donors? Yeah, Bates. What I tend to do is what I call a sustaining contributor accountability report. And they vary from organization to organization, but what I did in one place I worked was I got a couple of the major donors who live locally together at my office, and I asked them to define what they understood transparency meant and what, as major donors, that they would like to see in an accountability report, and I actually developed it based on their input. I did not try and guess what they thought was important. I didn't think that would be intelligent. Do you recommend putting the campaign goal in the brochure? I don't think it would hurt. I don't think it would help, Glenda. I think, you know, they're going to give a level that they've historically given. Remember what I said, the focus isn't on the case for support, the focus is on getting them to change their behavior. So putting the campaign goal in the brochure is going to help them change their behavior. That would be great. Can you talk more about not putting actual amounts in an ask letter? Yeah. I just bought a new car, Bob. I just bought a Fiat because, you know, because I'm in a midlife crisis. I bought a new car, and when I went to the car, there was no sticker on it. And I drove the car, and I liked it. And when I got out, I didn't care what it cost. What happens is if you put dollar amounts on it, you know, people that are major donors, you know, they're still cheap people. I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, none of us, giving money away is not a natural thing. It's, you know, so I think, you know, what you want to get them to do is to get excited about the society and get them excited about that level of giving. So, you know, just say, you know, in the letter say, you know, Bob, would you join the Pat Grace Society, celebrating those donors who make generous contributions? And then in the remit coupon, tell them what it's going to cost them. You know, tell them what it's going to cost them. But yeah, never put dollar amounts in an ask letter. You're not currently using a specific ask based on what they gave last year. Should be using that in our appeal. Yes, Steve, you should. Over the last 2 years, we've seen about an increase in giving about 5% each year. Steve, I would say that that's a function of the economy, especially in your area. You're out of the Dakotas out there, and I think you've got like a 2% unemployment rate out there. So I have no doubt that you've seen an increase in your giving. I don't know how much of that is related to what you've done. Some of it I'm sure it is because you're a sharp guy, but I think a lot of that is a function of the economy. Can you explain once again the 1% of goal is a major gift? Yeah, Jeannie. So if your goal for your campaign is $10 million, take 0.1% of that, and everybody giving 0.1% of that, which would be, I don't know, I didn't bring my abacus, but 0.1% of your campaign goal, or what you historically raise, is considered to be a major gift. Okay. That's all the questions I see here. Feel free to email me other questions that you may have. Guys, I hope this was of value to you. I really do. You know, and we'll be doing these once a month. I believe our next one is on donor loyalty. So I hope it was of value. If it was, let us know. If it wasn't, and you're like, geez, this stank, let us know too, because, you know, we do these in order to make you better development officers, and I want to make sure that what we're talking about is helpful. So thank you, everyone. You've got my email. We will be recording this, and we'll be making this recording available to you as well. So have a great day, have a great weekend, and take care.